He doesn't have it from a different source. But he's moving quickly, you see. Yeah, 30,000. That's from the war, I think. So then we have Agrippa II, who was a friend of Claudius, becoming the king of the Jews. But that's the son of Agrippa I, who had already been appointed by Caligula. So he's already moved into Nero's reign, which is in the late 50s. And then he's quoting from the Antiquities here in the next chapter, under Felix, who was the governor that Nero sent out. No, that Claudius, I think, originally sent out. Then I'm not sure if it was Nero or Claudius at this point. That the lower priests, the chief priest, seized the tithes of the lower priests. And there was a lot of robbing going on at this time. Josephus repeats that twice in the Antiquities. Once before the death of James and once after the death of James. It's in the Antiquities that he has the death of James, and he's leading up to it, and we're getting that. You see, in chapter 23, we're going to get the death of James. And that's going to be given to us in great detail. You see, look at that. Chapter 23 is about 4 pages long. I don't think we've had any chapter up till 23 which is 4 pages long, except some of the early ones. So, honestly, that shows us that he has more information about this episode about James than he does about just about any other episode he's recorded so far, in terms of sheer paper weight. And he's taken it from 2 or 3 sources, mostly Hegesippus. But I mention it because it's in the context of these things that terrorists started to develop. He calls them the robbers or the bandits of Jerusalem. By others, they're called Sicari. So Josephus calls them Sicari after the knife that they supposedly used, the Roman Sika. But I'm not sure that's why they call themselves, whether they call themselves or their opponents call them that, as I've told you. And in the midst of this is the mid-50s, the high priest Jonathan was assassinated. Now, he doesn't tell you who Jonathan is, of course. Jonathan is the son of that Ananus that's pictured in the Gospels as taking part in the trial of Jesus. Whether that's a true picture of the Gospels, you'll have to decide. But the point is that he's one of his sons. And then another of the sons of this original Ananus is high priest at a later point, and he's the one responsible for the trial and the death of James. He's also called Ananus. Ananus ben Ananus, if you like. Ananus, the son of Ananus. And he's the brother of Jonathan. So though these people never put anything together, and I hate to say that I'm smarter than them or vice versa, but these people never see any relation to things. They just give us data and nothing seems to have any relation to it. There's a sequentiality. Sequentiality is whatever happens to Jesus happened. Later there's agitation on a part of Messiah, on Jewish messianic ideology in Rome. The Jews are for some reason blamed for this, expelled from Rome. Maybe they sneak back later on. Then there's trouble in Palestine between the different priests, the groups. The poor priests versus the rich priests. And in the midst of this, these arguments and squabbles, Jonathan of the family of the people partly responsible for the death of Jesus. When Jesus tried at the high priest's house, in the Gospels, it's the father of this person. What do I make of that? He's assassinated by these extremists. Well, I like to link together groups that claim to have the same enemies. Forget the ones who are claiming to have the same friends. If you have similar enemies, you probably have something in common. Well, that puts, again, the early Christians have something in common with the extreme zealots. They both seem to have the same enemies. And I would say the assassination of this Jonathan is vengeance for what was done to earlier messianic leaders, perhaps, like Jesus. Or just because they have the same political goals. In any case, I then think that the opportunity that Ananus, the brother of this Jonathan, takes, and of course Eusebius doesn't put any of these things together. As soon as he's able to, when he gets to be high priest, to try James for some trumped up charge, is vengeance for the assassination of Jonathan. You follow me? So I think these things are all related. It's just not, these are not just like, oh, this happened, then this happened, then that. No. These things have a sequentiality that a lot of people who don't have look, you're learning a lot about this period just from being in this class, but imagine even before you stepped in here, if you were to take the knowledge you had before you came in, compared to even what you've gained now, I mean, you're light years away from where you were when you started, because you have all kinds of data now to plug into things you didn't have before. So of course before, I mean, okay, a Jonathan guy was killed, oh yeah, then a James guy was killed, oh yeah, he was killed by an Ananus guy, yeah, but nothing would hang together until you begin to realize the relationships. Then you see that these things do hang together. So it's not out of the blue that he's killed, nor will it be presently out of the blue that this other thing happened. So in between this, we're in the 50s now, there was another impostor that appeared, who's referred to in the book of Acts, when Paul is asked, are you the Egyptian that fled, and so on? As you see here, 30,000 assassins into the desert. He quotes at the end of 21 what the Roman centurion supposedly said to Paul. I think the 30,000, by the way, there is taken from the 30,000 killed in the stampede. That's where they get the 30,000 figure from in the question there. No 30,000 assassins didn't run into the desert. You can be sure of that. The most that ever went out there in all our accounts are 4,000 or 5,000 or 6,000, but I don't even think those may be accurate. In any case, he collected a group of people on the Mount of Olives. Now this is from Josephus now, the Antiquities. And he tried to force entry into Jerusalem. This is in the late 50s. And he's obviously an agitator of some kind. Now, a lot of people say this is Simon Magus, because he learned the magic arts in Egypt, and that's why he's called the Egyptian here. So he's popping up again. If it is or isn't, we don't know. Don't forget what the Gospel says about Jesus, I called my son out of Egypt. This may be mixing Jesus' material with Simon Magus' material. I think it is. I don't think Jesus' family ever went to Egypt. That's dealing with biblical things. That's in the Gospel of Matthew. It's not in the other Gospels. Luke doesn't have them ever go to Egypt. In the other Gospels,